Forget about his insides, his plumbing and furnaces, put a thing in his hand and be done with it. No one wants to know what's in his head. It should be enough. To make something beautiful should be enough. It isn't. It should be. Games are meant to be visual. In fact, sometimes visual novels feel like two steps to the left of like a real game, although that obviously isn't really the case. But when you think of video games, you aren't going to think of, say, Liar Liar unless you're just like really into it. You're going to think of Super Mario or The Legend of Zelda or whatever. But games can be developed in any number of ways, in any number of styles, and that includes text-based games. Now, this video started out in a completely different direction. When I'd originally started doing research for it, it was supposed to be a video about games based on books, like the Harry Potter games, the Lord of the Rings games, you name it. But also this. Did you even know that there were not one, but two games based off of Frankenstein for the NES? I'm sorry, this is just like really intriguing to me. These games are action platformers, and though they really have very little to do with the source material story, they have a wicked cool style to them and excellent soundtracks. But I'm getting distracted. Like I said, I originally wanted to make a video on games based off of books. And then I remembered like forever ago I'd saved a game on itch.io based off of a romantic poem. And this is, I think, one of the most liberal uses of the word game ever. It's pretty much just text. Just text. And it rules. I want to say right now that this video is probably going to be extraordinarily boring to most people, and it's going to contain a lot of me reading excerpts from these games. If that isn't your thing, I completely understand. There are also, as always, going to be some pretty heavy topics mentioned throughout the video, so I'll put up content warnings where necessary. Your discretion is advised. The game is called Christabel, which is based off of the poem by the same name written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge from 1797 to 1800. It's a hauntingly beautiful work with some gnarly imagery and all around a very lovely read. But the game itself, good lord. It essentially exists as a rewrite and reformatting of the poem with 4 different possible endings, and it somehow makes the poem even more striking. I'd probably attribute this feat to the rawness of the writing. While the original poem is written in the fantastical syntax of the late 18th century, the game is composed of writing that seems extraordinarily modernized by comparison. And while this is probably just because it was written by someone in the year 2024, it doesn't hurt or diminish the experience at all. In fact, I'd argue that it heightens it. It seems a bit more connected to our reality. It's a bit more palatable, a bit easier to digest, and this works for the horror aspects of the poem greatly. Let me read you the beginning of the original poem by Coleridge. Yeah, I was gonna write the entire intro to the poem in my notebook, but then I realized that it's really long, so I'm not gonna do that. Pardon me. 'Tis the middle of the night by the castle clock, and the owls have awakened the crowing cock. To wit, to woo, and hark again the crowing cock, how drowsily it crew. Sir Leoline, the baron rich, hath the toothless mastiff bitch. From her kennel beneath the rock she maketh answer to the clock. 4 for the quarters and 12 for the hour, ever and aye by shine and shower. 16 short howls not over loud, some say she sees my lady's shroud. Is the night chilly and dark? The night is chilly but not dark. The thin grey cloud is spread on high, it covers but not hides the sky. The moon is behind and at the full, and yet she looks both small and dull. The night is chill, the cloud is grey, 'tis a month before the month of May, and the spring comes slowly up this way. The lovely lady Christabel, whom her father loves so well, what makes her in the wood so late, a furlong from the castle gate? She had dreams all yesternight of her own betrothed knight, and she in the midnight wood will pray for the weal of her lover that's far away. Now let me read you the same portion of the story from the game. It is the middle of the night by the castle clock. You are in the wood, but you hear the bell tolling. The owls hear it and they cry. The cocks hear it and they crow. Sir Leoline, your father, has a toothless mastiff bitch. She makes 16 short howls, as she always does, in answer to the clock. Some have said she sees your mother's ghost. The night is chilly but not dark. The moon is small and dull. Spring comes slowly here. You kneel below a huge oak tree and pray in silence. You've been dreaming of your betrothed knight, Sir Gilseric. As you pray for his welfare, you think of his hair, his face, his hands. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everything has to be as straight to the point as possible. I quite like when texts are roundabout and long-winded. I think that's one of the many virtues of writing. You get to be as direct or indirect as you'd like. And the original poem is good, excellent even. But it's not nearly as harrowing as the game. It almost reminds me of that one Tumblr post that takes the story of Orpheus and Eurydice and reformats it as a poll. Pause if you'd like to read it. If this wasn't already obvious, the medium used to convey a story has a massive impact on how touching it is. And interactivity, no matter how limited, will almost always serve to benefit it. The biggest benefit for a story being told through the medium of a game is, I would say, the intimacy of it. Specifically in this case, you aren't reading this poem for high school English class. You instead find yourself taking up the same space as Christabel. You are sharing a body with this character. Her words and thoughts are now yours, and your actions are now hers. Also, the game version of Christabel is like especially good because it has this overarching vibe of like homoeroticism about it. Like, between the titular lady and Geraldine, and between her dad and Geraldine's dad. I'm not sure if this is intentional, and it probably honestly isn't. But if you read it without regard for the actual story, it sort of just reads as like a toxic vampire Yuri love story, which, you know, I find fascinating. One moment I especially like about the game is this. You sit up and recline on your elbow to watch Geraldine. She was abducted, you recall. That could have been you, the victim. You click the underlined text. That could have been you, the captors. You click again. That could have been you. No, it couldn't. Nothing like that would happen to you. Now, what kind of host would I be if I didn't include a range of games here? Because, you know, text-based games don't have to be iconic representations of romantic poetry. It could also be this. As the title suggests, this game is about waking up as a skeleton and dealing with that. It is also about wallowing in self-pity, getting into a Rubik's Cube mind fight with God, and blowing up hell with heat-seeking missiles. This game is a joke. Even I won't sit here and try to overanalyze it because that's simply not the point of its existence. It is a silly little thing meant to not be taken seriously. This game is so unserious, in fact, that I literally have nothing else of value to say about it. Other than, perhaps, that the style and music are really pleasing to my brain and that I will always be a sucker for new age PC games developed to be playable through Game Boy emulators. Or in this case, an actual Game Boy. This game was created by Nikki Flowers, who seems like a genuinely really cool person. They have a few creations on itch.io, including one titled Look at a Picture of Walter Becker for 1 hour. It is exactly what it sounds like. I mean, I assume. Full transparency here, I have not actually sat down and looked at a picture of Walter Becker for 1 hour, but I think I can probably guess how that experience might go. Now, it wasn't until discovering and playing these last two beauties that I actually found out just how many literature games there are on itch.io. It was hard to whittle down my selection for this video as there is just an unprecedented amount of ambition that itch.io exudes, and I wanted to get to know all of it, all of the writing. But I had to pick two that served my needs here. The first of the pair is titled The Good People by Sue David, and it is a fucking doozy. Written from the perspective of protagonist Daniel, presumably Native American or otherwise indigenous. This work is... well, the first word that comes to mind is long. It could probably be played in one sitting, but it's definitely a good chunk of text. Now, I'm not an indigenous person. I am not qualified to link this game to any real-world events and have it mean much of anything. A commenter on the game's page said it made them think of the Trail of Tears and how records of Native Americans are destroyed en masse whenever the opportunity arises. I agree with these sentiments. That adds nothing of value when coming out of my mouth. What I can understand is the fear of being in a place that feels haunted. Daniel and his partner, Alice, are exploring a long-abandoned village which was once home to his ancestors but now only houses ghosts. The village was flooded at some point but now only sits in an arid pocket of nothing. As you explore the ruins, you unravel multiple things simultaneously. The relationship the couple shares is tumultuous at best, always arguing and scaring one another. You are also let in on every secret it seems Daniel has ever kept. He experiences the extraordinary sure, but his inner monologue is constantly frustrated and self-loathing, the man too cowardly to do anything but fester in his guilt. He left his family young and independent to travel the world, and now his parents are dead and he hasn't ever visited their graves. But alongside these very normal occurrences are the existence of myths from his culture, passed down from one generation to the next. Sorry, I'm back. There was a bug. I had to kill it, and then, well, my mom killed it. I'm also very sweaty. I'm just now realizing. This is not going great. Alright. One such mythical being is an unnamed entity that I believe acts as a reaper of sorts, a herder of the dead. When it first appears in the story, it is simply following Daniel around a flat that he and Alice plan on renting out. It isn't necessarily threatening, I guess, but it does unsettle. It seems to be haunting Daniel, and just like that, the memory, or flash forward, ends. The second time in the story that it appears is in the present, perched atop a tombstone. Alice comes face to face with it and screams in terror, and then Daniel comes to the rescue and he is still. They are both, technically, unable to do anything but stare at it. It asks what ruined the landscape. Fire, it assumes, but you explain that it was water, that destructive god. Water, cries the entity. Its corrosive voice sounds perhaps sad. I close my eyes, but I keep seeing it. Water, you're sunken and forgotten, it says, and it gapes at us. You did whatever you could to forget me, but I return and I'm hungry. This entity is not the only one that Daniel and Alice encounter while in the village. When they manage to run, try to escape to the car, and realize that they've lost 8 hours in the village when surely it's only been 3, they see them. The good people. White like specters, holding torches or possibly made out of fire themselves, they march impassively towards the village's church. Of course, the couple tries to hide, tries to evade what they perceive as monsters, but there's no hiding from the non-human. Stopping the 2 adults as they try to make a beeline for their car, the good people drop what seems to be a cross at Daniel's feet. A silent plea, or rather, command for him to join them. It's what he deserves. It's what they're owed. I am not entirely sure if this game has multiple endings, but I made the decision for Daniel to pick up the burden of remembering. After all, it only seems natural, doesn't it? A man so racked with guilt and contempt for everyone, including himself, would rather sacrifice himself than try to save his own ass. Maybe it's his attempt to try and seem like some sort of martyr. I think it's really just the path of least resistance. And for the last minute of the game, the perspective shifts from Daniel's, now completely unrecognizable, to Alice's. And I, acting as her, make the choice to walk away. If Alice has any love for Daniel, which I'd like to think she does, she'll let him make this decision, for once. This is how the story ends. He'll share your burden, I say, and I start walking. The dead let me pass. Daniel says nothing and I don't look at him. I take the key from my pocket and unlock the car. The headlights flicker, and I think I see hoof prints under their light, but it's just a moment, and who cares? I sit in the driver's seat. The light in the car is warm. I drive carefully to the road, and then drive carefully in the road, too. They always say I drive too slowly, but I'm just very careful. One has to worry for what may happen. I hesitate to be that guy and explore what I might think is the point of the good people, because it's one of those things, I think, that has to be taken and digested as it is if you cannot relate to it. Not that it doesn't call for analysis and introspection, because obviously it does, but man, you've just gotta read it. I know that this probably seems like a massive cop-out on my part, because it is my job to play these games and tell you what I think they mean, but again, this game was not made with me in mind. Apart from shallow connections I might feel to the characters on the basis of mental illness, I have never experienced anything like Daniel and his family. However, I can completely understand the rawness with which he describes the village ruins. He explains that the buildings he sees are scabs across a dead landscape, all reminders of a death that was unavoidable. Alice, a writer, describes scenery to him, all vivid imagery that brings the community back to life, if only mentally. But this doesn't invigorate or awe Daniel, not really. It horrifies him. It seems to him like she's bringing back something that should have stayed dead and buried. It isn't admirable of him, his constant refusal to accept his own terror. But it's understandable. I sometimes think about my ancestors. I think about how they would have wanted me dead. I think about it when I look at old photos. I feel it when I'm standing at an antique store here in the South, staring at a well-loved Confederate flag for sale. The idea that your existence is a mistake, that whatever God made you spat you out wrong, is enough to make anyone into a snot-nosed child. It is this feeling that you are not meant to exist the way that you do that brings me to this last game. Exsanguinate by Nihilism is probably the most abstract one so far. It is about a woman. It is about a dead woman. It is about psychosis. It's about being an unwanted, terrible daughter-in-law. It is also about none of these things. Exsanguinate is one of those experiences where dumbing it down to plot beats does it a greater disservice than complete misinterpretation would. Conceptually, it's no different than the last 3 games. Visually, it is probably the most bare bones one by far. Delightfully, it is one of the most compelling short stories I have ever read. Unlike the fantastical unknown of Christabel or the foreign culture, to me, of the good people, Exsanguinate is about something with which I am devastatingly familiar. The rebellion of being queer. Okay, listen, I really did try to keep this from being about gender and identity, but I think I threw that out the window when I implied Christabel was a lesbian romance, so. I am notably not a lesbian. I'm a bisexual dude, and I will never fully be able to relate to being a daughter-in-law to my girlfriend's homophobic mom. But does it really matter? Okay, the difference is certainly important, and I'm not saying it's not, and I'm sure this story was written by a sapphic person for sapphic readers. But at the end of the day, a body is just a host. A boy kissing a boy, and a girl kissing a girl are both frowned upon indulgences. The story of Exsanguinate is unfiltered and vehemently depressing, and I really don't want to spoil it. It's a short story, really short. Go read it. It was 10 minutes long. What I will say is that it reads exactly as it was supposed to. It reads as a eulogy. It reads as a message to the deceased that grants the narrator the freedom to express every thought of blood under her fingernails that she has ever had. I had no idea you'd miss me so much. Of course you did. Of course I did. I was a wreck. I thought I'd die of it. Nuh-uh, can't die of grief. And doesn't that just drive you mad? Imagine if I had. It'd be unbearable. You are unbearable. But you would bear me. Always, baby. And then I died. And then you died. And then you came back. I don't think that this game is perfect. I don't think that its words and thought processes are very easy to follow plot-wise. Brevity in conversations between the narrator and her now dead girlfriend don't aid much in interpreting each scene. But I will be damned if I have ever read something that feels this honest. It is a fictional story, maybe based on real events, made for a game on itch.io. And it feels like I am reading this poor girl's diary. Like I am reading something I shouldn't. But I can't stop reading because there's this gross thing inside of my chest that begs to be known and understood, and this poor girl is taking the words right out of my mouth. None of these games have very much in common at all, save for the fact that they are about words. And I doubt any of them are considered revolutionary, nor will they ever probably reach a wide audience. They're passion projects, jokes, assignments for school. They aren't especially interesting at first glance, unique primarily in how basic they seem. I don't know if their creators will even remember making them down the line. I doubt that people who've played them will have some core memory based around them for years to come. But I will. For nothing else but the sheer fact that they exist. And shouldn't that mean something? I have seen hundreds of identically uninspired games in my time, most with exorbitant budgets behind their productions. And these games that can be laid out in the Notepad application are already occupying more space in my brain than any of those. The very first text-based game was created in 1961. It was about baseball. It was essentially a PDF of black text on a white background. In 1964, the Sumerian game came out. It was about resource management. Fast forward 8 years and you've got Pong. Fast forward 14 years from that and you've got Castlevania. Then you had Street Fighter, then the Arkham games, and then Minecraft, and you get the point. There are AAA games now. Games with mocap, photorealistic graphics, and storylines that take days to complete. But doesn't it feel like the novelty is kind of faded? Tennis for Two is hardly remembered as a revolutionary gem. It's remembered as old. Things cannot exist without spectacle to back up their validity now. If things aren't visually stimulating and aesthetically pleasing, then they're regarded as boring, and you shouldn't waste your time playing them. And that very trend is what draws me to text-based games like the ones I've gone over. Sure, they could just be short stories, typed up in a Google Doc or posted on Tumblr. But they weren't. They aren't. They're video games. They were created the way that they were for a reason. They're stories about sinking ships, and they're going to take you down with them. You are the player. You are now an accomplice. It isn't just text on your screen anymore. And maybe it never was. To make something beautiful should be enough. It isn't. It should be.